where we are right now is we have one more day of phase 1 split squad. So that's today. Tomorrow the players are off, and then Sunday we'll have 3 more days of phase 1, and we will be full squad. So we'll be full squad starting Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then as it progresses, you get into phase 2. You have what essentially amounts to an OTA. You take a day off, and it's starting to look more and more like training camp. So I think the coaches and players have done a really nice job to date, getting a lot of good work done on the practice field, which is incredible to be out there on a practice field with real live football players. Just watching our coaches coach has been awesome for me. Just bouncing around the different positions and listening to them teach has been very, very impressive. So the guys are really attacking this portion of training camp, doing a great job in the weight room, the conditioning part of this. So we just got to keep it going. We've been virtual on all of our meetings. Starting Sunday, we will do meetings in person in the morning, and then we'll do virtual at night. So again, there's a progression to all of this, and we're just going to keep talking about it, keep thinking about what makes sense as we continue to be ready to pivot at a moment's notice. So that's what's going on with us, and I'd be happy to take any calls.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Coach. Our first question is going to be from Tom Withers.
Kevin, thanks very much for the time. Hey, so we were talking to Andrew Berry the other day, and he had some real nice things to say about Baker Mayfield, how engaged he's been throughout the entire offseason. Just want to get your general impressions of Baker now that you've had, been on the field with him at least for a few days.
Yeah, he's doing a very nice job. I went down to see Baker March prior to everything going crazy. So that was really our first time to get in person and talk about life and get to know each other, if you will, down in Austin. So from that moment until now, I've been very impressed with Baker. He is all ball. He understands his role. He understands what we want him to do in this offense. He's doing it on the field, just watching him get through the cadence and kind of line people up. Very impressed with him. I know Andrew mentioned how the shape he came in, and it's really impressive. He did a nice job, and that just doesn't happen. There's a lot of work that goes into that, and he clearly has done the work.
Andrew also mentioned, Coach, that Baker's done a really nice job of kind of creating chemistry through a very difficult time. How vital is that? And do you notice that as just kind of we've been around Baker long enough, it's kind of a genuine quality of his. How important is that from that position?
Yeah, that position, your job is to make other people better, number one. And in order to do that, you really have to get to know guys, and you got to know what makes them tick. And I think one of his strong suits is understanding his peers, his teammates, and he works at it. So that is definitely a strong suit of his.
Thanks.
Great. Our next question will be from Mary Kay Cabot. Mary Kay, if you can unmute on your side, please.
Yeah, Kevin, can you maybe just elaborate on that a little bit? I mean, that really seems like going above and beyond the call of duty for you to actually, go to see Baker. So can you just tell us a little bit about what your thinking was behind doing something like that and how it came about?
Yeah, I think just that relationship, as everybody knows, the head coach quarterback relationship is important. I hope to travel to see many different people, in the off seasons. But I just felt like it was important for me to sit face to face with him, meet his family, kind of get to know each other. And that's something that I will continue to do. And that's really been, that was a charge going back to March. And even now the charge is we got to get to know each other real quick. And, we want to come together as a team. And part of that is we really got to work. I have to work hard at it. Our coaches, our players have to work hard at getting to know each other in a bunch of different ways so that we can, come together and get ready to go practice and play. And there's just this element when you are virtual, when you do have 2 separate locker rooms, when you have the plexiglass up, you have to work extra hard to come together.
Now, in retrospect, when you look at that meeting, it probably stands out as being even more pivotal to you because you weren't able to get to know him in person thereafter, right?
Yeah, I didn't know about this global pandemic, though. I will admit that wasn't part of the thinking. But it was very fortunate that the timing worked. I was able to get down there and spend a good night with him.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mary Kay. Our next question is from Tony Grossi.
Hi, Kevin. What are you going to do about your guard position? Do you feel you're thin there? And as part of that question, will the backup players receive much less repetitions during this camp so you can get the starters ready for the season?
As it pertains to the guard question, Tony, I think that's what Andrew and his staff are working on every day. I think they walk in the building and say, look at the roster, how do we improve it? So, I know with the opt-outs at that position, it's certainly something that we will continue to look at. As it pertains to practice reps, you have to get your starters ready. You also have to get your backups ready in this year. So we have to be very mindful of how we divvy up those reps. And I've sat down with the coaches already, and we have a plan for that. But I don't think it's a season where you just say, hey, I'm getting my starters ready. I think that may not be smart.
Great. Thank you, Tony. Your next question is from Daryl Ryder.
Hey, Coach, now that you've had a couple of days, at least to be on the field and do some walkthroughs with these guys, just, what are your early observations? What have you been able to glean from those, if anything? And, just what do you take away from what you saw?
Yeah, Daryl, I think what is obvious to me is that guys worked very hard in this offseason, both physically and mentally. I think watching the walkthroughs, watching the coaches interact with the players, there is a good understanding of what we want to do. Now, I'll steal a line. I talked to Coach Kubiak the other night, and he said it, and it's right. The teaching is ahead of the doing right now. So we had a really good offseason of teaching. We've had a ton of meetings to this point, and now with these walkthroughs, we're finally doing. So just to see the guys walk through techniques, and literally walk through. We're having a period where these guys are not moving very fast, but they're getting the body to get through the football movements is really important. So I've just been impressed with what the guys have been able to retain going back to the spring. And then, like we talked about, the guys attacked the offseason in the weight room and showed up in really good shape.
And how much time have you been able to kind of spend with some of these rookies? They didn't have that traditional introduction to the National Football League this offseason. Everything was done, virtually or whatever. But just what do you take away from the young kids, Jedrick Wills and Del Pitt and those guys?
They're bright-eyed. They're listening. And so I've really enjoyed truly getting around to the different positions and watching the coaches coach, watching them teach, and the guys are absorbing. And we have to just be so efficient in our days, try not to waste a day, try not to waste a period here out at practice. So the guys have been very engaged.
Jeff Shadell, your line is open.
Kevin, kind of a follow-up to Tony. Do you just need more bodies to get through training camp on the offensive line with 4 guys opting out?
Well, I wouldn't put it that way. I think we need good players, and I think that's Andrew and his staff are going to work really hard at all these positions. And if we should have a need somewhere, we want to get a good player in here. We want to make sure that we're bringing guys in that have a chance to develop.
Great. Our next question will go to Dan Lobby.
Hey, Coach, as you guys do sort of get into the real practices next week, at the end of next week, do you feel like you have a good grasp at some of those positions up in the air as to who, might go first, might go second, or is that hard to do without much of a spring program?
What do you mean first
Well,
and second?
at right guard, for example, who might be your number 1, number 2?
I think you operate from a depth chart, understanding that positions are open and this is a competitive place. Now, someone has to start, like you said, but then the next period you may start somebody else, and the next day you might start somebody else. So we'll just make sure that with each one of those positions that are up for grabs and have an open competition, which I think brings the best out of people, we'll make sure that we get the amount of looks that we need to make an informed decision moving forward. But we do have time.
Thanks.
All right, next up is Scott Petrick.
Hey, Coach, I had a couple of follow-ups on what you've already talked about. Were you surprised guys came in as good a shape as you mentioned, just given the restrictions some guys had in finding facilities to work out in?
I wouldn't say surprised, Scott. I'd say impressed. But I knew that because we were one of the teams that required them to videotape their workouts and send them into us. So I think there was value in that. And so I've seen guys in their garage using the coolers as a bench rack. So I love the message that those workouts sent to their teammates, that nothing was going to hold them back to get their work in. So I think we've seen the fruits of that work with the guys showing up here. And it's not over, I should mention. I mean, there's plenty of work to do in the weight room. There's plenty of work to do in the meeting room, on the field. But I really think the guys made the off-season program count.
And with the walkthroughs, how important are they given the off-season was all virtual? And with your wide zone, like, can you guys – is it really beneficial to have the walkthrough? Do you need to be full speed to really gauge what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I think the walkthroughs are awesome. I mean, we need to – there are meetings on the field at a minimum, so we're outside, which is beneficial, and we're lining up. Now, we're also lining up. We're spreading out. We're being safe early here in camp. But, yeah, I think, Scott, there's a progression to teaching. We've certainly had a lot of the meeting room part of this. But then you always want to walk through before you do something full speed. So that's kind of this works out really nicely in our teaching progression.
Thanks.
Great. We have 6 hands up. We have time for those 6 questions. So each of the next following, Jake, Nate, Mary Kay, Zach, Marlon, Tom, have time for 1 question apiece. We'll go to Jake Trotter.
Yeah. Hey, Kevin. How do you feel about the position that Andrew and his group has put your offense in from this offseason, and really – specifically, we were talking about Baker earlier, and how he's arrived. The position they put Baker in and surrounding him, dressing tackle, signing Hooper, bringing in Case, for him to be successful.
I think Andrew and his staff did an outstanding job going back through free agency, through the draft. You asked the question about the offense, but I really think they had a plan for the entire roster. As it pertains to the offense, yeah, I think it's important to have a productive offense. There were some parts that we felt we had to go out and acquire, whether via free agency, via trade, via the draft, and we had a plan. And certainly you would hope if you're doing that, you're making life easier on the quarterback. That makes sense to me. But I think the plan was more so let's bolster this offense as much as we can.
Great. Nate Ulrich.
Hey, Kevin. One aspect of Baker that we haven't discussed with you is related to something that you had said a while ago about, protest and get in the arena. And since then, he has come out and said that he, absolutely will kneel during the national anthem. So I was wondering what discussions you've had with him about that, and what you think of him, as a leader of your team coming out and taking that stance.
Yeah, I'm proud of all of our guys that have done the research, have educated themselves, have been very thoughtful about their actions, about their words. And Baker certainly fits into that category, someone who's passionate, but he's listened before doing. And I just think that's so important. Social justice is something that we are going to constantly, as a team, talk about. We have formed a social justice committee. We're going to make sure that we're talking and listening to each other, and then ultimately doing. And Baker's a great example of that. But just all in all, I've just been so impressed with our guys understanding the change that they can affect throughout this offseason, and it's going to continue through this season.
Great. We'll go back to Mary Kay.
Okay, Coach, I'm going to try to squeeze in 2 quick ones here if I can. Were you worried?
Rob, he called
Sorry, Rob. He'll give short answers. Were you relieved or were you worried based on some of the things that Odell had said? And I know they were 2 weeks ago, but were you concerned at all that maybe he wasn't going to play, that maybe he might opt out this season?
No.
So you knew all along that he was going to be all in. And when you saw that Wall Street Journal article, then you weren't fazed by that.
I'm not trying to give you a short answer to appease Rob, but no, my conversations with him have been very positive.
Okay, good. Then the other thing real quick, Jarvis Landry. Are you proceeding as though you're going to have him for the opener? I know you are already thinking about that first game. So are you envisioning that you're going to have Jarvis on the field for that, or are you trying to think about plan B and plan C?
I think for all of our guys that are working through it, whether it's an off-season surgery or really anything, Mary Kay, I'm so focused on today and tomorrow and maybe a week. I don't know that we're going that far out because we don't have to. I just know that each one of our guys, we have a plan. We got really smart people here. Got a great training staff, have a great strength and conditioning staff. We have a plan for each guy, and guess what? It varies for each guy because we're not going to treat a guy, Jarvis, for example, the same as you're going to treat an interior offensive lineman or whatever it may be. So we'll have a plan to bring him along just like we will really all of our guys.
All right, we'll go to Zach Jackson.
Coach, everybody knows about J.C. Tretter's role as president of the NFLPA, but I want to ask him what he means to ask you what J.C. means to your team, both as a player and as a leader as you go through this strange.
Yeah, I think that center position is so important to this offense, any offense. I was fortunate to be around Matt Burke, a very intelligent, good player for many years. John Sullivan, intelligent, good player. I've been around some really good centers. Garrett Bradbury recently at Minnesota. JC is really fun to be around as a coach because there's just no limit to what this guy can do from a mental standpoint. And what that does for the entire team, for the quarterback, I think is really important. On top of that, JC plays really hard. And I think there's such an element with that offensive line that Coach Callahan demands about being gritty and tough and playing through the whistle. And I think I see that on tape from JC. So as excited as I am to work with him and diagnose blitzes and all that, which he's certainly capable of, I just think I love the style of play that he brings to the Cleveland Browns.
Great. We'll go to Marla Ridnour.
Hi, Coach. Just one more thing about your meeting with Baker in March. Is there something that sticks out, like something he said, a scene sitting around the dinner table, or, that just kind of something that made an impression or you'll always remember?
No. I was, it was just good for me to get down there, Marla. Again, that's an important relationship. I know other coaches have done that before. I want to make sure I get to know a bunch of guys in the future. But I'll just tell you, it's just important for me to get to know the person, get to know the family. So they were gracious hosts down there in Austin.
All right, to wrap us up, Tom Withers.
Thanks. I got 9 quick ones to squeeze in here, if you don't mind.
It's up to Rob.
I'm just kidding. Hey, back to that meeting then in March. Kevin, at that point, how much did you know about what Baker had accomplished or didn't accomplish last season? Like, what was your, familiarity with what he went through? And did he convey any of the disappointments from last season to you?
Yeah, I would say when you spend as much time as you spend with somebody, in a day like that, you cover all the bases. But I just will tell you, from that moment till now, I see a very committed football player who's ready to lead, who's excited to play. But I go back to, I think Baker's a really good teammate. I think he really understands his teammates. I think his teammates want to play hard for him. And that just goes back to that thing he's got that nobody can put a finger on and that the quarterback position has to have. You got to have it. You got to make sure that you're bringing your guys along. I mentioned earlier, the number one job of a quarterback is to make the guys around you play better. And there's a bunch of different ways to do that. It's like the point guard on a basketball team. And I just think Baker has embraced all of that from the moment he and I have gotten to know each other.
One last one. When you guys signed Case, everybody looked at it as, wow, that's like the ideal guy for Baker. Are you already seeing that relationship kind of form in its early stages?
I am. And, having coached the position, I know that room is unique. There's a lot of unique rooms on a football team. But that quarterback room, you got to work together. And I've seen great examples of it in my career. And this one, I think, is in that same vein with Case, with Garrett, Alex Van Pelt, just the way Alex's demeanor, the way he runs the meetings, the way he is out on the field. I think there's a great thread running through that room, and certainly Case as the old veteran in that room plays that role, I think, really well.